I really hadn't intended on doing so many of these cesspools so close back to each other kind of thing. It was going to be like one a week, or maybe one every 2 weeks, or even maybe one every month or something like that. But I got to tell you, man, there's so many problematic people out there. It's hard for me not to do these things. It's like, holy crap. It's like the shit never stops. But it doesn't, right? It just continues and builds and. But anyways, I'm gonna do another one. So,
especially with atheists online,
they do seem to have a bunch of fuckery. Yeah, this is gonna be a highly demonetized video. I have a feeling because of the language. Usually, it just takes the first 15 minutes and it goes away after that. But yeah, we're already gonna be demonetized. But that's quite all right. So as you guys can tell, I have a well-known, a very famous, a prolific, a infamous, even I would even say one of the best, the all-time greatest trolls in the history of mankind. Mr. Brass. Yay.
Nice to be here.
Give it up for Mr. Brass.
Woohoo.
Woohoo. Do people even know who you are? I don't think they do. I guess you've been around a long time.
Oh, yeah. I've been pretty much around a lot. Especially, people will know me on Twitter probably more than they know my YouTube.
And you're one of those high-quality trolls. You're one of those trolls with intelligence and style. Not to harm anybody, just... make light of stupidity.
Yeah, pretty much. That's my style. I've always had a dark sense of humor. And Twitter is just one of those places where people give you plenty of ammunition.
That's how the show got its name? Literally because, I kept calling the Twitter CessPool. So it was kind of apropos that I call this show the cesspool because Twitter is a cesspool. There is no ifs, ands, buts about it, man. We're all on it. We have to use it. It's kind of a social media must nowadays, but you have to take the bad with the good. But it is a lot of just shit on it. That's what a cesspool is.
Well, I will say this: it has given me plenty of content.
Where do you put your content out? I mean, besides Twitter. I mean, do you have any other content you put out?
I do on YouTube.
I don't know if I watch your channel. I remember back in the day, because you've been around a very long time. I've known you for a long time, but you were back around the day back before you started seeing the light. You used to hang out with a guy named Dean Esme.
Yeah, I was part of him for a while, and then he really got angry at Shannon over something very stupid, and that was the end of our partnership.
When does he not get angry over something stupid?
I haven't talked to him really since then.
Well, what did he used to go by? Oh, I don't know if he still does. What does Dean go by?
I believe he went by a Red Pill Religion.
Red Pill Religion, yeah.
Yeah.
But he had another name, didn't he, before that?
Many names.
Yeah, what was Dean's name before that? But anyway, yeah, he goes by Red Pill. Man, Max Colby. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, let me know. Couldn't think of the damn name. I'm so bad at names. You guys want to watch this, and you guys think that I can remember names. I can't. I'm so bad at names. So, but anyways, yes.
Well, I mean, you're very old, Steve.
I am. I mean, dude, you try going back and remember names like Moses and Jesus and Peter and Paul and John. I can't remember this kind of stuff. I mean, I didn't go to the Last Supper, but I got an invite. So, So anyways, tonight we're going to be doing an episode on Randolf Richardson, president of Canadian Atheists, who I feel is a very problematic, I wouldn't even call him a YouTuber. Usually there's a YouTuber things, but he goes on YouTube's channel, so I guess it counts, because I'm trying to keep these cesspools to YouTubers, although I'm sure it's going to branch out afterwards, but...
there's just so much to work with, man.
It's hard not to do an episode on him. It's really... And even I've talked about him before on my main channel. And his webpage, but we went over the logic on his webpage, which was horrifying. I guess would be the best word to describe that. Horrifying. And
I mean, like I said, he's one of those few people, like outside of maybe Kent Hovind, he's one of the people that can butcher multiple fields of academia in about one or two pages.
Every page on his webpage looks like it basically looks like a brain dead second grader tried to make it. It's abysmal. It has factual errors. It has just statements of falsities. It's just crap. I mean, I showed it to a guy that I know is really good at logic, and I said, "Hey, can you kind of look at this? This guy's a master's degree in philosophy, and he had to take a lot of logic." And I was like, "Can you tell me, what you think of this?" And He's just like, this is garbage. I mean, this wouldn't even pass some preliminary intro course crap. So, but
Oh yeah.
so we're gonna kind of dive into that. Like I said, this is a show about a critical analysis of problematic YouTubers and things of that nature. So, oh, you guys have seen it. People have seen it. Yeah, I know Reverend Ruin's seen it. The design is horrible. The rest is abysmal. Yeah, that's in a nutshell. There you go. That's the show.
It's offensive to both the eyes and the mind.
So before we get into that, let's dive into some of the real quick, because this kind of piggybacks off the last episode. If you guys remember, I did an episode on Ethan, who is ProLib on YouTube, that was making some false statements, and of course, we recognize that he doesn't care. They don't care. Randolf Richardson makes these false statements all the time. He just doesn't care if they're true or not. That he's one of those trolls that I think is dangerous, because when you make false statements and you don't care whether they're true or not, and you proliferate them and they promulgate around YouTube, you're committing an ethical something that's not ethical. You're committing what's called impermissibility, something that is a moral wrong, in my opinion. So,
well, yeah. I mean, when you have a large following, or just even a decent sized following, if you're constantly putting out misinformation and not really caring, I mean, that is a bit immoral, and it's very viceful.
It's grossly immoral. I mean, and he's been corrected numerous times, and he still doesn't get it. He still doesn't care. So let's put this thread out here. And by the way, this is a much longer thread, and I'm not going to go into all of it because I think you guys are going to get the gist of it. And we're going to go to his webpage. But basically, I was saying that this was okay. This was from Glenn, who is everybody knows is financing my lawsuit with the Non Sequitur Show. He helps me out in other ways as well. He says, my issue is that you guys run a bullshit narrative, and you know it's bullshit. Yeah, well, I think everybody agrees about that.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, that entire uni crowd knows that they are bullshitting. They just don't care. Randolph Richardson falsely accused me of having a restraining order under Violence Against Women's Act, which was determined to be a lie, and he just doubling down and tripling down. This is what the atheist community has as leadership, because he is the quote president of the Canadian Atheists, which I don't know if it has more than one person. Does anybody know the size of it? Because I tried to find it. I was just curious. Is it like a organization of one or two? I don't know.
I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it much myself. Although I will say, as a guy that's into men's rights and stuff, the VAWA is probably one of the most destructive things that happens to many men, because all it really takes is a false accusation and your entire life is ruined from the get-go. So the fact that they're trying to pull this is, I think they're trying to get you canceled.
Oh, they've been doing that for years. And it's a narrative that they're running. It is a pure defamation. There's no question about that. It is a falsity. It's made under false pretense. It has caused harm, obviously, to reputation and things of that nature. But the worst part is that, like I said, he just doesn't care. He just doesn't care. And by the way, the atheist community in a whole has not ever, not anybody has ever denounced him from the atheist community. I mean, we have atheists that have, but they're not really part of the atheist community any longer, because they just find that them to be this type of moral lacking of turpitude. So I don't know, man. I don't know why the atheist community went to shit the way it did. They could have been much stronger if they just would have kept to the core values and not ingratiated themselves with problematic people like this. But whatever.
Yeah. The problem is sort of like, I think it's like the problem of intellectuals, like some people say it as, where you have people that are maybe good at one specific narrow area, but then when they go out of that area, they're just complete shit.
I don't know what areas he's good at, because if he has one, it's certainly not on his webpage.
Well, not Randolph in specific, but I know like guys like Aaron and they have like one specific field.
He's good at phylogeny.
Yeah, they're good at like maybe at evolution and stuff like that, and they're very great at that. But once they go anywhere outside of that narrow range, like, just no.
Just to let you know that Lumo says he has a pair of waterproof headphones, and he'll be listening to us in the shower. So basically, he's taking us to shower with. So that's fine. Yeah, conserve water. Shower with a friend. Okay, so Manoff says this, and this is only yesterday, and he's been saying this for a while, but that's what I'm saying. You don't have to go back and find anything. It's all the same nonsense. He says, Oh, you know what? I'll let you read it. Save my voice because my voice is shot. Oh, speaking of shots, by the way, I got another shot. Not to be a tangent, but I got another shot yesterday, Mr. Brass. Yeah, I got a tetanus update. You're supposed to get them every 10 years. Somebody said every 30 years, and I asked them about it. And they're like, no, well, it's every 10 years. And I don't know. Some place I read said 30. So, but yeah, I got a tetanus, pertussis, whatever the hell it is, shot. So, and it hurts now. It didn't hurt yesterday, but it hurts a little bit today.
All right, so you want me to read Randolph's like me in court, like beginning with the
you be Randolph, I'll be me. Nobody else wants to be me.
Oh, all right. In accordance with the Violence Against Women Act, VAWA, all states, tribes, and territories in the USA must grant full faith and credit to protection orders issued by other jurisdictions. Restraining orders are a type of protection order, including the ones served to you.
Okay, so what he's talking about is under the VAWA, which did expire in December 21st, 2018, there was something in it referring to Title 18, as actually Title 18 of the USC Code. Actually, was it Title 18? I know it was 18 USC, but I forget the actual title. But it was 18 USC 2265, which was full faith and credit given to protection orders. That's what I was referring to. That's what's in the actual TRO. It has no relevancy to the VAWA any longer. The VAWA just supported that. But the narrative out there, as we pointed out yesterday, well, no, it wasn't yesterday, last show, whatever it was, on Ethan, is that they were claiming that the judge had went out of his way, or her way, I don't remember, I think it was his, to put it under VAWA, right? Because there's, quote, tons and tons of evidence. We know that's a lie. We know that didn't happen. So Randolph Richardson is running a narrative. And I tell him, VAWA expired December 21st, 2018, idiot. And I'm being nice here. 18 USC Title 2265 refers to full faith and credit given to protection orders, not the VAWA, which just means it goes statewide, which I would have never fallen under as I've never met the person. Are you willfully the stupid or being completely dishonest? To fall under VAWA, you have to at least have some kind of relationship with the person. He doesn't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also in the Article 11 of the Constitution, full and faith credit, yes.
Well, to me, you can never discount it possibly being both, that he's both stupid and dishonest.
They're not mutually exclusive. As a matter of fact, they tend to kind of work together.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this was go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I mean, of course, just go to Young Earth Creationists, you find that.
Mikey Cage says, Steve, you seem to cover a lot of people that have a big problem with fact-checking their shit, LOL. Yeah, well, that's how I kind of started this channel, right? I mean, I'm all into fact-checking. But what's funny is when they try to fact-check me, they get so much shit wrong, mostly because they don't have access to me. They don't have access to what I know and what I have in my documentations and my files and my notes. They don't know a shit about what I know. And so they have to fill in the blanks, right? They go, oh, well, I'm just going to suppose this, and I'm going to run this narrative, and I'm going to bullshit here. You guys know me, so you guys can come to me directly, and you guys get the facts directly from me because I have the evidence.
But Steve, don't you know that you're just a prescriptivist that wants to dictate to atheists what atheism means?
So this was the original quote, and there's more to it. There's just this one place. The judge added that on his own. This was a claim. This was a lie. Randolph Richardson has been perpetuating a lie, and the atheist community says nothing. And this, to me, harms actual victims. This makes it on the level of, hey, you know what? You don't like what somebody's saying on the internet. I'm going to try to get a TRO on you and shut you down, and then claim that a judge added Violence Against Women's Act to make it sound like it's far worse than it actually was, as there was, quote, tons and tons of evidence, which there was none. And Randolph Richardson doesn't care. So, anyways, that's all I want to talk about that real quick. But you can just see that he's already one of those people that are just completely dishonest. He has no compunction to want to fix his shit. Just he has no need to. He just thinks that, look, I'm an atheist, and I'm going to do whatever I want to shit on people. And it has, by the way, that's nothing to do with atheism. There's a great atheist out there. There's atheists that I support, right? I mean, atheist pastor is a wonderful atheist.
Yeah.
There's many wonderful atheists.
So, guys like Graham Oppie.
Oh God, yes.
I love guys like that. They really, they bring up interesting points that I love going over. Oh God, we have this website.
Oppie's brilliant, and I keep on telling people, look, and I'm going to put this out there very, very strongly here. If you want to be the best possible atheist you can be, you should not be listening to people like Randolph Richardson. You should be listening to people like Graham Oppie, Mackey, Cyril, name some other, Draper, McCormick.
Schollenberg, the divine hiddenness thing.
I don't. Is that his name?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I know the divine hiddenness argument, but yeah. So I mean, those are the ones that are published. Those are the atheists you want to go to. These are not atheists of any academic standing. They're political people. They're just people that think they know about a topic when they really don't. Because Randolph doesn't know fuck all about atheism, and this page here is really solidifying that to no end. I mean, he starts off. I mean, look at the domain, Mr. Brass.
Mm-hmm. Defineatheism.com.
Yeah, the official definition of it, he calls it. Yeah, Burgess Jackson's is not. Burgess Jackson, I think, is actually a theist. Burgess Jackson's not an atheist, but he's very good. His paper is really, really good against Flu's presumption of atheism. But okay, so I don't even know. Here's the thing: I don't even know where to start here. I mean, you tell me. You took notes, so you tell me where you want to start, and we'll let you kind of guide this because I've already done this once on the logic stuff, so.
Well, I went over the etymology.
Etymology, okay.
That's where my stuff begins.
Do it. Take the floor, man. Lead us through this.
Yeah. In his, in these etymology support section, he goes over the fact that atheism is atheos, but he, for some dumb reason, and many people do this, but they forget to attach the ism to it. And just says, oh, well, it's just godless. Yeah. Well, to attach the ism is important because that is relevant because when you attach it to it, it becomes godless doctrine.
Yeah, matter of fact, because I think he points this out somewhere. When you have an ism, an ISM in suffix in philosophy, it generally means either a doctrine, theology, or more specifically a proposition. Yeah. Something that's propositional, right? And so the theory of godlessness or the theory that God does not exist or the claim that God does not exist all comes down to basically, essentially, ostensibly, the belief that God does not exist, which is a proposition, right? So the proposition God exists, right? And you believe it or don't. That's what the ism is for. And he doesn't get that.
Yeah, and from a historical standpoint, this makes sense is because, people that did not believe in the deities of the pantheon, they weren't just merely people that said, oh, I just don't believe in your gods. No, they were saying, no, your gods do not exist.
Yeah, a lot of them just said there's one God, a monotheistic type God. Yeah.
Yeah. And, they said, no, point of fact, your God does not exist. What you believe is BS. So they weren't just people that lacked a belief in it. So, I mean, that was just a deities of the I always just found that just incredibly dishonest how he fails to include the ism in it. And the ism is what drives a lot of the definitions.
Absolutely. All right, continue on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the next thing I go over is he goes over the burden of proof somewhere. And, and as, he likes to point out this whole notion that, I don't know if he does it on this specific section, but I know that in general, he says that the burden of proof is not on atheism, but as you have pointed out multiple times, even with the lack-theist understanding of atheism, it still has a second-order burden of proof.
Right, because it's a belief about a belief. But before we get on the burden of proof, let's stick on the etymology for a second, because there's some other good stuff in here.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't understand what the Greek alpha primitive is, and he doesn't understand the anti-prefix, because he's like, it means opposed or opposite. He actually thinks that anti-theism means the belief that God does not exist. That's what he thinks. Contrary to anything you can send him, or anything that people can cite to him, because he thinks that but what's an anti-hero? An anti-hero is not somebody who's a villain. It's not somebody who's against heroes. An anti-hero is a hero. It's just a reluctant hero. So words have usages.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing. I actually did write that down. He tries to redefine anti-theism as strong atheism, or you could. But here's the thing. In the philosophical literature, anti-theism deals with the utility of belief in God, not about whether or not God exists.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, there's a difference. I mean, because, in some of the philosophical literature, I think Guy Connor, I can't pronounce his last name, he wrote a paper on sort of like that. And he says, even if I grant God exists, it would be we would live in a immoral world if a God existed.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of different philosophers that actually have argued the same thing about the axiological value of God, right?
Yeah, so I mean, the anti-theism part argues for a completely different thing than the atheism
Correct.
part.
The anti-theist argues that the belief in God and or religion overall lowers the value of society. It's detrimental. It's harmful, right?
Yeah, and this would apply even if, for example, if God did exist, because it would still apply that belief in God is overall still harmful to society, even if he were to exist.
Right. You could be an atheist and hold an anti-theism. You could be a theist and hold an anti-theism. You could be an agnostic and hold an anti-theism. It's any one of them. It's about, again, the belief. But he puts it in here like, I mean, this is like weird. He says like antimatter, opposite of matter. No, that's not what antimatter is. Antimatter is not the opposite of matter. It's still matter. It's a type of matter. It's just different polarity, different spin. The properties are different, but it's still matter. It's not the opposite of matter. It's just like, what the hell are you talking about? And then he's like, atheism, not theism. No, that's not what the A means in atheism. This has been well established. This is documented from Stanford Encyclopedia. It's documented for Oxford, Cambridge, that the A means not as in the negation of the proposition, has nothing to do with being without something. It has to do with the negation of the proposition, which will entail without being gods. But again, he doesn't understand those types of concepts. He just doesn't.
Well, and it sort of gets the whole thing misunderstood, because the thing is that, it's not atheism, it's atheism.
Atheism, yeah.
But I mean, so, it literally means godless doctrine. So
that's what, that's what it was. It's actually, atheism is listed. I mean, if you read about I think it's Oxford's reference, where let's say you have a word in a journal or something like that, you're not quite sure how it's used, you can go to a reference source. So Oxford's reference says it's the theory or claim that God does not exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's been the historical usage since forever.
So this guy trying to change, it's not like he's saying, hey, this is how it's used now, I want to be used this way, like Flew did, right? And Flew had every right to do that. I mean, he got shat on by the philosophical community, and his argument sucked. But he didn't try to lie to people. This is downright deception, how he's saying these things, right? Because he's just putting out misinformation.
Like me and you have both said, multiple times, it's like, if you want to, let's say, start a group and, you guys want to use, atheism in the lacktheism sense, but you clarify that, all right, look, this is not the way the philosophers define it, but for the sake of our group, this is how we define it. Now, if you want to do that, go right ahead. I'm not going to sit here and dictate and say, that there's this one true.
Right. No, they can do this, sure. But I mean, be honest about it. The only thing I've ever said, I'm like, be honest about it. He's not being honest about it.
I mean, you could replace, you could say you could redefine atheism to mean a chicken sandwich. It's not about purely the word, like the letters and the word. It's about the content.
There's no intrinsic meaning in these words. They have usages, and they are polysemous. It's, by the way, a lot of these people are using that word polysemous, which I never even really heard anybody out there using before until I brought it up and said it was polysemous. And all of a sudden, it's like, people are saying the same thing. I'm like, and then they're saying, what's funny is they argue it to me. I see it on Facebook all the time. They're like, this word's polysemous. And I'm like, I've been saying that for how long? I mean, and by the way, a lot of them will parrot what they've heard and the arguments that they've heard. And I'm like, yeah, that's my stuff. It's like, I mean, I'm not trying to brag, but it's a humble brag a little bit, I guess. But it's just like, dude, you're telling me what this argument is, and it's my argument, All right, what else we got here? What do you want to go to? I don't. Do you even want to touch the logic? I mean, it's so bad. I don't know what you have your notes on. So.
Well, I don't have the notes on the logic. I figured you would go over the part.
Yeah, I got that memorized. It's so bad.
Yeah, so do that.
What do you want to go over? Philosophy?
Oh no, do the logic. All
right.
You.
All right. First of all, everybody out there, make sure that you are at least somewhat inebriated, or have some kind of mind-altering substance, because this is brutal. All right. So he's talking about logical consistency, which I don't think he understands what logically consistent means. Logically consistent means that all the propositions in a system of propositions can be true at the same time. Logic is a natural and useful intellectual scientific tool for the testing of consistency of our understanding of concepts and ideas, claims and assertions, hypotheses, and theories. A lot of ands there. Both scientific and colloquial, casual, day-to-day decision-making, etc. And is an essential part of mathematics, science, engineering, philosophy, law, cooking, art, music, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. All right, so whatever. This is a symbolic key map. This is where it really goes off the rails. It may just gets derailed. So, okay, so this is called a tail. It's a logical tail. It means the negation of something. Okay, you can use a tilde, you can use a tail, but whatever. And it means negation. Okay. B is belief, believing psychological. No, that's not what a B. Now he could work. Now he's changing it prescriptively. Okay, he's not describing the usage in how you would find this in academia. He is prescriptively saying it's something else. No, B in a logic is not a psychological belief. It is the assertion or the disposition, the epistemic disposition that the proposition is true. It is not psychological. It is propositional, and he doesn't understand that. Would you agree?
Yeah, you're correct on that. I mean, well, remember this: if he actually understood logic, he wouldn't be a atheist.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he's putting this out as if like informative, like, oh, I'm explaining logic to you. He's not saying, hey, this is how I use these things. And if you want to have stipulative use of logic, go ahead. But this isn't logic. This is not doxastic logic. This is not predicate logic. This is not any form of logic that I've ever used, because he's talking about psychological dispositions rather than an epistemic disposition or some kind of predicate towards the proposition.
Is it fuzzy logic?
What's that?
Is it fuzzy logic, Steve?
It's not even fuzzy logic. It's mind-altering stupid logic. Fuzzy logic at least has uses, right? Because if you don't have a line of demarcation, you say, hey, look, instead of having binary where you have a bivalence of either it's the case or not the case, you can say, hey, you know what, somewhere in there. It's like if I say, Mr. Brass is short, that's kind of fuzzy. What I mean by that, what's the threshold, right? Is it 5'4"? Is it 5'3"? Is it 5'2"? Is it relative to something? There's some fuzzy logic there when you say, okay, Mr. Brass is short, ugly, stupid, whatever,
Oh, don't keep flattering me, Steve.
All right, so D is deities, and this is weird. Capital D is deities, and deity is a god or goddess. Okay, so no, it would be a proposition that the deities exist. So D would be the proposition that a deity exists, not deities. Okay, and then K would be knowing. Okay, that one's fine. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Here under the symbolic map clarifies meaning of select vocabulary in that public discourse, linguistic research and political debate, and epistemological exploration. The particular words of interest are atheism, antitheism, theism, all which pertain to the psychological state of belief. No, that is not what they do. Matter of fact, atheism and theism are generally not held as psychological states. Can you treat them as such? Yes. A lack belief would be a psychological state of atheism. But if you read the literature, atheism is not a psychological state. It is a propositional state. Most of the time. I mean, again, we're talking about if you go pick a paper at random, that's how it's going to be used almost every single time. So not B, D. Now, the way this would be normally inferred to be not believe the proposition that a deity exists. So not if D was the proposition a deity exists, it would be does not believe deity exists. Okay, but that's not how he has it here. But he has not believing in deities. Well, he doesn't even have this as a proposition. Now there are other forms of logic he might be able to get away with this in. I don't know. I've seen some weird things, but he doesn't explain it well. He doesn't explain it as propositional. Is more commonly known as the absence of belief in deities and can be accurately characterized with a statement, I don't believe in deities. Okay, then why don't you have the proposition there? He never states his propositional, does he?
Nope.
Okay.
I don't think he understands what a proposition is.
Nope. And a proposition is something that can be true or false based upon whatever conditions. What's called truth makers, truth conditions that are based upon truth bearers. The not symbol indicates not, or the tail symbol indicates not, or in this case, absence in accordance with the A prefix, which means without. While the B and D symbols inform us that the belief in one or more deities, theism, is the subject of your hand. No, that is not what it means. If you, again, go read the actual literature, the not symbol represents the negation of the proposition, not of the predication. So it doesn't negate belief, it negates the proposition. Because if it negated the proposition, it wouldn't be I don't believe in deities. It'd be I don't believe in deities. It'd be I believe deities are false. So, why? Well, actually, I guess if it negated if it negated the disposition, I guess it would be I don't believe. But that's not how it works. It works that if you have the a prefix, it is saying that if God exists, if the proposition is God exists, then the negation of that is God does not exist. And that's what you believe. So this is just foobar. I mean, every time I've ever shown this to anybody that has any experience with logic, they never talk to me again. I get blocked. I can't show it to any more people. I mean, all my subscribers right now that are watching would be just like unsubscribing after this. We can do the next one if you want.
Yeah, we can go over the purpose section, which is probably one of the richest parts that he goes into on this thing.
You don't want to do the anti-theism because this is great.
Oh yeah, let's go over the anti-theism.
Yeah, explain the anti-theism here, because this is like what the fuck times 10.
Well, anti-theism, as he said, is the belief that there are no deity. It is a position that is diametrically opposed to belief in deities. No, it isn't.
No, it's not. Yeah. And you notice there's no citation for this? No. In fact, we'll get to his citation list. He actually cites his own blog. How arrogant can you be self-referential that you cite your own blog? I mean, I cite my blog in Twitter or something like that, or I say, look, this is my blog, but I'm not going to cite my own blog within my blog. That makes no sense.
Yeah, that's just sort of stupid. I mean, this isn't even like maybe an academic journal where, you're in a new field of expertise and you're one of like the 10 people that are now studying it. And so, of course, you sort of by default have to cite yourself in your previous works.
Yep. That's
fine, but this is not what this is.
And then he gets into the whole agnosticism, which I'm not going to bother with because that's going to be boring as shit. Just to say #wrong. I mean, it's just... that's not what agnosticism really is when it comes to the ontological domain. But he doesn't understand the difference between the ontological and epistemological domains, and he just throws them together. Nor is agnosticism even related to Gnosticism. They're completely different things. They're unrelated. Even Wiki says don't conflate them. Even says don't confuse with Gnosticism. And he does. He does exactly what he confuses with. By the way, look what it says here. He thinks this does not have knowledge about deities. This actually to be I don't know deities exist. That's what this would recommend. If you read this in logic, it'd be I do not, or I don't, right? Or it is not the case that I know deities exist, right? So if you're reading a paper and you see not KD in this case, it will be obviously not KP. But if you see not KP, it means I don't believe the proposition. I don't know the proposition is true, right? And you can still believe it, but it's very confusing. If anybody read this blog and went to go take a logic course on this stuff, they would be confused as shit.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then he gets into this propositional stuff. It's just bizarre. I'm not going to get into it. There's another video on my main channel if you guys want to watch that. So, all right. So, what do you want to look at?
The purpose section.
Purpose.
Yeah. Obviously, he sort of goes into how big bad society is treating atheists like bad because they're trying to, what he says, force them to use the philosophical definition of atheism. And, sort of like with the Aaron Ross sort of...
a whole bunch of Christians are behind that rather than actual reason, logic, and consistency and some other things. I mean...
Yeah. Well, he says, like, the burden of proof obviously is not on atheism, but, like I've said before, as you pointed out multiple times, even if you take the Lactheist conception, one still has a second order burden of belief.
Yeah, and he's not the only one that thinks that. I mean, obviously Matt Dillahunty thinks that way, and Richard Carrier thinks that. Well, no, okay, so let me rephrase this. Paul Draper, who is the person who wrote the atheist article in SEP, he actually believes that atheists do not have a burden of proof. But what he's referring to, if I'm not mistaken, is an evidential burden of proof, right? An evidential as in a scientific kind of thing, right? He's not talking about an epistemic burden of proof. I'm talking about, when I talk about a second order, I'm talking about an epistemic burden of proof to make your position rational. He's not talking about that. And so he's talking about an evidential. His mind's very similar to, I think, Richard Carrier, is that atheists have already met some kind of burden of proof evidentially wise, and that it's up to the theist to, show otherwise. Now, I disagree with especially with Richard Carrier on it. Paul Draper, I think I kind of understand what he's saying. Maybe don't really fully agree, but I at least see his argument. I don't see Richard Carrier's argument. He argues straight up that there is just nothing that atheists have to have as far as burden of proof evidential wise, because it's already been met. And the only thing that applies to is science. It doesn't apply to philosophy. Like in evolution, the theory of evolution, the evolutionary theory has already been met. The burden of proof has been met. So if you think that the evolutionary theory is wrong, you think that you can assail, common descent or descent with modification or modern evolutionary synthesis, then you have the onus to do that if you want to say that is incorrect. And the biologists and the evolutionists assist back and go, okay, what do you got for us? Show us that it's wrong. And I'm okay with that. In a scientific context, I am perfectly fine with that. But that is not how it works in philosophy. And so I think Richard Carrier is wrong on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and here he's like I've said before, he's saying that, that, like, let's say big bad Christians and theists alike are trying to get atheists to use the more philosophical definition, as a way of vilifying them, vilifying theists.
Yeah.
Which that's as stupid as saying that trying to get people to use the standard scientific use of the word theory it's done to oppress young earth creationists.
Yeah, and I don't see a difference either. I think they're exactly the same thing. And I'm not a theist. I'm not going out there going, hey, use this usages because, theism. I'm like, no, there's actual argumentation to be had. If you notice, they've always denied my arguments. They've always, I'm going to say they just don't even evaluate it most of the time. They just say, oh, yeah, it's wrong. And you ask them, well, why? You know my arguments. You've seen my WASP argument, and I think I've sent you my paper that I've written. If somebody can show that it's wrong, great. Then I'll revise it and I'll fix it. But the people I've sent it to that know logic, that have, much greater understanding than I've got, they haven't seen anything wrong with it yet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, initially there's some minor stuff, but I fixed it. Lord Bryant wants me to tell you that you have another deist in the house, so you're not alone.
Oh, lovely. So basically that he's accusing guys like you, Steve, of demanding that they use the word atheism like how you want to.
Which has never happened.
I know. That's just a lie.
You're not.
Yeah, it's a straw man. You've never done that. You've said, look, all the definitions are valid, but some are more content-wise more logical to use.
Yeah, well, I think there's an axiological argument to be had as far as the value of using one for the other. But my argument has always been this: look, if you want to use the terms that way you want to use them, show why there's a benefit to do so, and how it doesn't lead to things like absurdities or category errors, or in my argument for my semantic collapse argument. Not one person has shown me how it doesn't lead to semantic collapse. Now, granted, that is my term. I mean, you're not going to go find a paper on semantic collapse the way I'm using it. I created that. But
Answers in Reason actually said it best. All definitions are valid. However, the one that uses propositional logic to provide an epistemological answer to the proposition God exists is the more logical, rational use of the term. It is more sound, and it's considered the normative use within philosophy.
Correct. And by the way, people will be like, oh, Steve said he created the term semantic collapse. That's not what I said. What I said, in the way that I'm using it with respect to my argument, I've not seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never said I created the phrase, but the way I'm using it, people can take things and change it to where it has a different usage, a different understanding. But that's fine. People do that all the time, right?
But basically, he's sort of making the whole R and Raw argument that, that we're forcing this belief, forcing this definition onto them, and we're trying to diminish atheists' individuality.
Yeah.
But, it's projection on their part. That's what they're doing. They're demanding that guys like you, Steve, call yourself an atheist.
I know, and I keep telling them, stop it. To me, they're the prescriptivists, right? So,
yeah, and the whole point is like when you use the term, you're using atheism in a way to give an answer to a proposition. That's sort of the entire point of it.
Yep.
And, I just think it's very stupid and it's unnecessary because, for one, we already have terms like for how atheism is used, and we call it non-theism, for one. So it just sort of seems pointless to have another, like this updated sort of version when we already have a previous thing.
Yeah, and that's actually, it's funny you mention that, because that's kind of the original thing for semantic collapse. Is there's the way I understood it, there's more general usage of a term. I think it was had to do with some kind of the Aboriginal language, but it was more of a general term. And if you have something that already covered it, why bother? I'm using it as more all of these terms kind of end up being the exact same thing. It's not just a general term that covers something else. Is that you have multiple different terms that are indistinguishable from each other for any practical purposes. That's a semantic collapse. So but you're exactly right. They're like, Steve's an atheist. He doesn't want to admit it. So you're basically doing the same thing a theist says, that, hey, God exists because Romans 1:18 says God has put it on your heart that God, and you're just denying it in your unrighteousness because you want to sin. What's the hell's the difference? They're doing the same fucking thing.
Yeah, they're just using a different book.
Right, they're just using a different. Yeah, they're using not even a different book. They're using Randolf Richardson's webpage.
Well, they're using the dictionary.
Yeah, they're using the dictionary. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But like I've always said, like they bring up how atheism is met with hostility, which obviously I agree with that part, and I think that's wrong. But I also think that if that is a big problem, then like you've said before, with agnosticism, like the agnosticism that you propose, like that you state for yourself, is very identical to what they're going for. And there's some differences, but the statement is pretty much there. And last time I checked, not really anyone really has problems with agnostics.
Generally not. But like I said, they don't even understand the nuances or differences, and they just kind of conflate all of them together. And then when you try to explain to them, they just get lost in the weeds. And it's very difficult to really break it down with people that don't really want to understand these topics. And they just don't. They think they understand things. They do not. And it's frustrating because you can send them all the information you want. You can show them evidence upon evidence upon evidence, and they don't care. Which, by the way, they have no right to say anything to a theist at that point, or even a younger creationist. Look, I can send facts and science to a younger creationist all damn day long, and they're probably not going to change their mind. Some have. It's rare. It happens. But when they don't, you can't bitch at them for it because these atheists are doing the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me, that's sort of called like the death. Like that's what this author of this book called "The Death of Expertise" by Tom Nichols. That's sort of what he goes into. That people there's such a hyper individuality that people see themselves as their own expert, even when they're not.
Mm-hmm. And people, I had this person the other day on Facebook, like Steve. Something like Steve thinks he's an expert. I'm like, I am not. I have never said I was an expert in this topic. Not once. I've always said very clearly that I'm not, but I'm a layperson that at least read things. That's more than atheists, or at least some atheists do. I'm not trying to be, too generalistic. But
yeah,
these atheists that Randolph hangs out with, they sure have it. Look, I mean, he's friends with the Duke. An aneurysm income. He's saying Duke's as much as an idiot as he is. At least doesn't proclaim that every word that comes out of his mouth is an objective fact that you must disprove in any response to any argument. Yeah, but they're both idiots, and these idiots kind of hang out together. If you notice the whole group of fuckery, there's definitely a relationship between all of them. It's not coincidental. It really isn't. So
no,
they have some things in common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean they definitely do. I mean. You pretty much do have all their objections that they played down. They say, agnosticism is just about knowledge. It's not about belief.
And then people send them my webpage and they go, oh, well, that's just Steve's work. And they're, yeah, what's wrong with it, though? Where did he make... I always tell people, look, if I have an error in my blog, I'll fix it. People know this. I've had people even still to this day, hey, I think you made an error. Most of them are typo grammatical, and that's fine. I respect that just as much, But as far as like any kind of informational, It's rare, but it happens. They're like, I think you mean this, or did you mess up here? And I'm like, I have to think about it. I'm like, okay, let me word it differently. It happens. It does happen. So I will fix it. So they're not interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Apparently, did you hear, by the way, Mr. Brass? I apparently have such skills, even though it took me like 3 days to learn basic Python, right? Some skills that I guess I can magically make downvotes disappear now. Did you know that?
Oh no, man!
Yeah,
I mean, that's
hear me.
the many talents that you have.
I guess I have more powers than I realize. I don't know if they're supernatural or something, but yeah.
Well, I mean, if it is supernatural, you're just going to be agnostic on it anyway.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. You accept supernaturalism?
Yeah, to an extent.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want to you want to go over the philosophy section?
Yeah, unfortunately, let's do that.
This is what makes my blood boil in a way too.
Oh, were you Lord Brian's mentor, Mr. Price?
Oh yeah, Lord Brian's. Yeah. What's funny enough is he actually told me that I got him out of young Earth creationism and fundamentalism.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. Oh, he was a young Earth creationist at one time? I knew he was a fundamentalist, but
I know he said he was a fundamentalist. I'd always take that to mean he was a young Earth creationist.
Not necessarily the same thing.
Well, yeah, that's true, but I know. I think that's what
he hangout though. I've never heard his voice. I mean, he tags me a lot, and by the way, I don't mean to be snippy with Lord Brian. I have been before because I inundated. I literally have spent 4 hours doing legal stuff before this particular hangout, and I don't have time to be tagged all the time, and so I don't mean to be Curt or whatever. It's just that I don't need to be tagged in every little thing, especially when I'm tagged with like 6 or 7, 12 other people. But yeah. So have you ever been in a hangout with him?
I've never been in a hangout with him, but me and him have had a lot of talks. We even set up our own. Well, he set it up technically, but I've pretty much been one of the key members in it on Twitter, where we have our own private group where with other deists.
So he says he was a young Earth creationist. So Brian, how come you've never been on a hangout before? I mean, do you ever want to come in and have a talk, Lord Bryant?
Mm-hmm.
No. All right, so let's go. While he's answering that, go to the philosophical perspectives here.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is he brings up philosophers and all that stuff, and please note the first person he's bringing up here, Christopher Hitchens. Christopher Hitchens, while he was a great man of rhetoric, I loved his his rhetorical skills. He wasn't a philosopher.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more on that. He was a rhetorician. He was really good at rhetoric and polemics and sophistry, and and he was an expert at it. And I like the Hitchens. I do like the Hitchens. Do I think that he may have had some not great arguments sometimes? Yeah, but who cares? Nobody ever has perfect arguments. At least made sense. And you remember that whole the whole debate with the Catholic Church as if it was a force of evil or good in the world, and for the was it the I squared or something like that? What was it? I squared, I think it was. But it was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant in it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I didn't pretty much. He has a great voice. I'd always liked the way how he had such a wit about him. I liked his debate that he had with Frank Turk. I thought that he absolutely won that one.
He annihilated him.
Yeah, because it was a matter of he has such a sharp wit about him. I like Hitchens myself, but
Frank Turk is just dishonest. I think Frank Turk is just he's a straight up scum when it comes to things. I mean, he tries to be one of the nicer ones, but it's like, dude, you are so intellectually dishonest. Tom said something interesting. Tom 34B, good to see you, my friend. It's been a while. He says, I had no idea. I always thought Randolph was a cool dude. Nothing personal against him. He's just an idiot. And he's dishonest. And he tries to harm people by running false narratives, which harms actual victims of assault and battery and abuse. And so if that's a cool dude nowadays, I don't know. But I even recognized him on some old Nadia hangouts. I'll have to check out his website and make a judgment, though. I do not remember him on Nadia's hangouts. Now, people that may not know, that's going back about, I would say, 7 years ago, give or take, on YouTube, maybe longer.
I know he did a debate with Deflating Atheist. deflating
He's
atheism.
another winner.
Yeah, I believe he did a debate on the modern day debate with him. I didn't really see it a lot, but I heard about it.
I don't watch Deflating Atheist. He's got some screws loose. So what do you think about this? TomTom says one does not need to claim to be a philosopher to someone else to call you one, though. I see, but I don't take that term. I'm not a philosopher. I happen to like philosophy. I'm very niche, though. I have like one specific area in philosophy that I kind of like read the most about, which is about atheism, and a little bit of ethical theory here and there, a little bit of philosophy of mind, which I can't understand. But I mean, I am not a philosopher, and I don't like when people say that I am, because I'm not.
Well, I mean, even the thing is like, even if you want to call Hitchens a philosopher, like, you know, as a term of endearment, even Hitchens didn't call himself one.
Right. He was if I'm not mistaken, he started off as a journalist, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what his big stick was.
Yeah.
You know, and this quote that Randolph actually did is probably not one of the better quotes that he could have done of Hitchens, because as smart as Hitchens was when it came to his wit, his history was just shoddy.
And also he says, like, I don't have to prove a tooth fairyism. I don't have to prove a Santa Clausism. I don't have to prove a witchism. But that's not an argument. Nobody's saying that you have to prove anything. That the only time you have to prove something is if you claim, I can prove something. Look, I can prove 0.99 equals 0.99 repeating equals 1. I can prove that in calculus many different ways. And I have the onus to do that if somebody wants me to and I want to convince them. If I don't want to convince them, then I'd have no onus. But to justify to myself that I can prove it, I have to know how to prove it in my head, and I could do that. But nobody says you have to prove Santa Claus doesn't exist. No, there's nobody arguing out there going, I can prove this or I can prove that. If they do, then you say, okay, fine, prove it. But here's the fallacy that he's using. It's a straw man. If somebody's not saying they can prove something and you tell them, hey, you have to prove this, they're straw manning you, period, because that's not the claim. The claim is that the claim is that they exist. That's a different claim than I can prove that they exist. Right? You can be a scientist all the time and say, look, I believe that certain particles exist. Like even when neutrinos were first posited, I think it was by Wolfgang, if I'm not mistaken. And he posited them and he said, you know, that something has to carry away this extra energy, this extra mass relationship. What is it? It's a particle. We're going to call it a little neutron, I think it was. So we're going to call it a neutrino. He believed that it existed. Could he prove it? Nope. Right? He didn't say he could prove it. Right.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, in science terms, like science deals a lot in induction and, you know, what is cogent. So I mean, generally proof is left to the mathematicians.
I agree. Matter of fact, I don't think science proves anything. I've been on record saying, look, science does not prove anything. It's not meant to prove anything. It explains, and it's by induction. Matter of fact, we learn things by induction. We don't learn anything by deduction. Deduction just reorganizes what you have and comes out a conclusion that has to be true, given the premises are true.
Yeah, you know, and like the part that gets me is like the very last one when it comes like the great Pierre Simon, that one, Marquis de Laplace. I mean, this is where Hitchens was a bit not philosophically, historically illiterate, because you know, Laplace never said that. In fact, this was a sort of thing that happened, like this was attributed to him saying this while he was alive, and he actually made a note of it, and he said, no, I never said this. In fact, it would have been out of his character for him to say that, because
Einstein has the same thing happen to him. He's quoted all the time saying things. Even Feynman's quoted. People misquote things all the time to people, or misattribute things to people all the time.
Yeah. So I mean, that's sort of how, you know, he never really said that at all. I mean, for one, the only person that was in the room with him and Napoleon when he was alleged to have said that didn't give a direct quote from him, and that was not what he was even said.
And even if it was, what's the relevancy?
Yeah, I know. Well, it's supposed to be sort of like a got you
from a guy that lived in the 19th century.
Pretty much.
18th and 19th.
It's supposed to be sort of a got you where he says, "Oh, look, I'm a rationalist. You know, my thinking doesn't need your God."
Hey, look, I'm all into rationalism. I don't eschew evidentialism or empiricism. Don't get me wrong. I think empiricism has its usage, especially in science. You have to use empiricism, right? I mean, what else would you use, really? I mean, it obviously has some rationalism thrown in there, but it's mostly empirical nature, right? So, but not everything for acquiring knowledge is from empiricism. We definitely can get knowledge from rationalism if you at least are not a skeptic, right? And I mean that as an academic or Pyrrhonian skeptic, where you hold there is no thing as knowledge. I'm neither. I do hold knowledge can exist, but again, there's no right or wrong answer for that. There are some very good arguments, believe it or not, for skepticism. I think where you can say, look, we cannot know anything, and they're not easily assailed. I looked at them like, yeah, these actually make some sense here. You know?
Did you hear me?
Yeah.
I said, it says we can't know anything, and I say, do you know that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, well, that'd be the Pyrrhonian skeptic that says we don't even know if we can know anything. The academic skeptic says, yeah, we don't know anything, and the Pyrrhonian says, well, how do you even know that?
Yeah, I would say that is, we talked about Frank Turk a bit. That's sort of a tactic I got from him. It's sort of the statement of self-repeating statements.
Yeah, I agree, and I love when somebody says they know something. I'm like, okay, well, when I say, well, how do you know that? I'm not asking for their reasoning. I'm asking, what's your theory of knowledge, and how are you making those theories of knowledge propositions that required to be met to say you have knowledge, right?
Well, and also Randolph strawmans what. He doesn't understand what theists are doing, because his mindset is what I like to say is like a climate change denialist, which, to be fair, I was one when I was a theist.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not a theist, a Christian specifically. But this tactic that they use, like he says that the theists are trying to, like I've said before, they're trying to vilify atheists by getting them to use the academic definition. And I said, they're trying to shift the burden of proof onto atheists. And I'd like to point out, no, that's not what theists are doing. They are trying to share the burden of proof with them, not shift it. They're saying, look, we're trying to have a debate over whether or not God exists, not about whether or not we believe God exists.
Yes, and they're also pointing out that, look, if you want to argue something or to say that you don't accept something, you still need to give reasons for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually looked it up. Like, literally, this is literally climate change denialist logic. You could read up Roger M. Cook's The Confidence Trap, where he actually does go over this a bit. Like I've said, theists are not trying to shift the burden of proof. They're trying to share it. They're saying, look, we're trying to have a discussion over the ontology of whether or not God exists. We're not talking about, what's your, because I don't need to know your psychological state. Like, for one, it's irrelevant in the debate. I mean, because we can do devil's advocate debates. And so, you could make an argument, Steve, for theism, and you're not a theist in that sense.
Sure. No, I can do that all the time, man. I'll play devil's advocate, and I'll put on a theist hat, because I used to be a theist. I'll put on an atheist hat. In fact, I even I was like, there's some people that are atheists. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so you take the label of atheist, but you don't believe there's no gods. Okay, let me try to convince you there are no gods. That's fine. So, I'll do that. I can do that. Yeah, I know a lot of atheist arguments that are really good. I'd like to see them argue against those arguments.
Yeah, and that's, and here's what's funny is, like, they're so low IQ that they don't realize that you're actually trying to help atheists.
I've always tried to help atheists. That's why the best atheists out there, I think, are the ones that have listened to me over the years and gotten better at these discussions with people.
Yeah, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to elevate the discussion, and you're trying to really get at the truth.
This is why people say I'm a cult leader, isn't it?
Yeah,
I just get it now. God damn it.
Although then again, the fact that you had yourself that you're the eighth holy pope.
That was kind of cute, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was, but I'm just saying that might have not helped you out much.
So Anthony Flew, though, in his paper, which I noticed seems to be conspicuously missing from this thing here. Anthony Flew in that same paper, because you know why? I've read it more than once. Quote, whereas nowadays the usual meaning of atheist in English is someone who asserts that there is no being as God. I want the word to be understood not positively, but negatively. And he doesn't mean like negative as in connotations. He wants to be the negative as in to be I do not believe rather than I believe God does not exist. He wants to take it as the what's called a subalteration. So if you have I believe if I believes P, then the subalteration is I do not believe not P. If you have believes not P, the subalteration is does not believe P. So if you look on the square of opposition, which again is my semantic collapse argument. So Flew was very clear on that. He's like, yes, atheism is the assertion that God does not exist, which is a little bit different, by the way, than the belief. Assertion, you can assert something and not necessarily believe it. It's called Moore's argument or Moore's paradox, or peculiar reasoning, or peculiar. Yeah, what was it called? Peculiar reasoner in dosastic logic. But it's rare. But an assertion it has assertic force to it, right? So it has an assertic force as an assertion. A belief may not necessarily have assertic force to it, and so there is a little bit of distinction to be made there. At least my opinion, whatever that means. But it doesn't matter. It's still basically, look, it is somebody who says there's no God, is basically what he's saying.
Yeah. And, and the thing is, we both have gone like on Twitter and other places about the problem with Flew's logic on this.
Absolutely.
I mean, for one, he uses the courtroom analogy, which is a pretty thing to use.
It's
because for one, in a courtroom analogy, the beliefs of the accuser and the person that's trying to convict and the person that's trying to defend, their beliefs actually don't matter in the context. What matters is, can they prove this person is guilty or not? Whether or not they actually believe the person is guilty.
Yeah, that's an evidential proof. And by the way, it's not actually like proof, like mathematically proof. It's beyond a reasonable doubt or preponderance of the evidence, depending on the civil or criminal. But that's not an epistemic burden. And we're talking about epistemic burdens, and people conflate them. They're not the same thing. There's a lot of different burdens. There's burden of proof, there's burden of production, burden of persuasion, burden of discourse burdens, evidential burdens.
Well, here's the thing also that people don't tell you. Like, when you're in court, the person that decides what the evidence will look like and how things will go, it's up to the judge and the jury. The judge will set the ground rule and say, look, this is what it will take to convict, and this is what it will take to defend.
Correct.
And, the judge, because the thing is that's different is that when you're having these discussions between atheists and theists, typically, I would say, both sides generally don't even have that arrangement where they know, all right, well, what would it take to prove your belief? They haven't reached that point yet.
They never get that far in the discussions.
Yes, but in courtroom, that's already a get-go from the get. Like they said, the judge says, all right, look, if you want to prove, let's say that Steve murdered someone, you have to have this level of evidence. Like you have maybe DNA, maybe you have all the typical stuff in a murder. And they'll tell the defendant, hey, look, if you want to prove that Steve didn't do it, you see if he has an alibi, see, the DNA evidence, see if it matches him, see if like any friends of his can vouch that he couldn't have possibly done it. This would already be laid out. And then after that, once they've left that process, then they are both, like I said, the beliefs of the two sides, like the defendant and the person that's trying to convict, it doesn't matter. What matters is what they can prove. They can both go home after the court and hate each other and think that their argument sucked. But what matters is, can they convince third parties, i.e. the judge and the jury, of the problem?
They're not trying to convince each other. They're trying to convince a third party. And I'm surprised that narrative hasn't been ran yet. That I'm not some kind of serial killer. Give it time. But yeah. So real quick, the problem with the courtroom analogy, there's many problems. But one is that there's four possible, and this is, I'm sorry if you guys already heard this, most of you guys already have, but there's some new people in the audience. So for them, Flew argued that there's a presumption of innocence in our court system, and that, you have to like meet a certain threshold of evidential evidence, not epistemic evidence, but evidential evidence to say, okay, it is beyond a reasonable doubt that this person is guilty. Now, The reason we have that is because there's 4 possible outcomes in a court case. There's an innocent man that goes free. There's an innocent man that goes to jail. There's a guilty man that goes free, and a guilty man that goes to jail. Those 2 that are the innocent man going to jail or the guilty man going free are called judicial infelicities. These are things where the judicial system has failed. And in America, at least, we hold that the judicial infelicity of a innocent man going to jail is worst value-wise. Again, this is axiological. That is worse for an innocent man to go to jail than it is for a guilty man to go free. That is why we have the presumption of innocence. That's not the same thing as why we have, and why we would want a kind of presumption of God, one way or another. There's no reasoning to have a presumption because there's nothing at stake, right? There's nothing saying one thing is going to be a more consequence than the other, unless you're some theist going, well, if you don't believe in God, but that's Pascal's wager, right? You're going to go to hell. They're the ones seem to doing the presumption of theism because you might as well believe God exists if not you're going to hell. So the presumption of atheism makes no sense in relationship to a courtroom analogy. And Burgess Jackson makes that very case. What's that?
Yeah, like you were pointing out, the whole, you presented the 4 possible outcomes. What you were describing is what's called Blackstone's ratio, which is, it's the notion that it is better that 10 innocent persons, are set free, are let off the hook than it is for 1 innocent man to suffer.
I agree. Yeah. And it should be that way, right? Because there are people. Look, if somebody is innocent of something, I mean, look at all the fuckery that people accuse us of, and me, and it's like none of that has ever taken place. I've never been arrested. I've never had any criminal convictions. I mean, the most I've had is a speeding ticket years ago, kind of stuff. I mean, minor stuff, and which, by the way, was paid off. So I mean, it's like they don't seem to understand there's a reason why we have this presumption of innocence, but we don't need the presumption of atheism, just like we don't need the presumption of theism. Both of those are bad arguments.
Mm-hmm.
So
it very much is. Like, it just doesn't work because the situations don't call for it. The burden of the presumption of innocence is more of an ethical thing and a bit of a logical thing, because if you presumed everyone was guilty, then
can you imagine? Well, that's how it was back maybe in the like biblical times, right?
Depends on when you're talking, because obviously there's a long span of history and areas there. But if you say that everyone is guilty and proven innocent,
that'd be a hell of a society, man. I wouldn't want to live in a society like that.
Yeah, and I mean that's sort of how it is. But it's more of an ethical thing as well, like we said, where we're going from a matter of ethics, and I think it's sort of a bit of a deontology, if I'm getting correct. Although you can make a utilitarian case for it. But
okay, so how would that be? Why would you want a utilitarian case that's the best for everything by having everybody guilty? I think if you want a utilitarian argument to be that it's best to have a presumption of innocence, because that, I think, overall is good for society. That's what I meant. I meant you can have a utilitarian argument for the presumption of innocence. Yes, absolutely. It is a utilitarian argument. And by the way, doesn't necessarily mean utilitarianism is good. I'm not a fan of it, but in that particular case, it actually works.
Well, yeah, it could also be deontological, because you could make it as a rule, which is sort of what Blackstone did.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of deontological stuff, but I understand why they have certain things that are more rule oriented. Rule authority. Was it rule utility? What's it called? Rule. Oh my god!
Deontology.
What is it?
I mean, wait. You say like rule? Well, you mean like rule utilitarianism, or like rule?
Yeah. Rule utilitarianism.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you can Blackstone, use a more deontological case for it. At least
would that be deontological? If you're basing it, if you say, hey, the moral good is what's good is what corresponds to some kind of rule for you, rule utilitarianism, that is the best for everything. Wouldn't that fall into deontological? I don't know.
Just from what I've known from the history of that, that's what I've heard. But I mean, like I've said, there's multiple different ways you can parse it. But yeah, I think it's just that, I just think it's just like we've said before multiple times here, is that it's just bad to use the courtroom analogy in this, because the stakes are not the same between like, let's say Steve is accused of murdering someone. Like, the stakes are not, in a typical debate over does God exist, the stakes are not, if we get this wrong, an innocent man's going to go to prison. That's not the stakes that are out
unless
there.
the theist would argue the stakes are high because if you don't get it right, you have eternal damnation. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
There's act utilitarianism and there's rule utilitarianism. Act is in accordance to the action itself. So something is good if it corresponds to a certain action that's beneficial to society as a whole. Rule utilitarianism if it's beneficial to the rule. If it accordance to a rule and it's beneficial to the most amount of people in society. So that's act utilitarianism versus rule utilitarianism.
Yeah, so I definitely, it is interesting to go over all the ethical theories. I believe me and you both more lean on virtue ethics.
I do. I tend to virtue ethics. Now, I do have a page on my blog. If people go to the video description and go to the Radio Debate community, I do have a page on moral terminology. It's pretty succinct. I don't get into any real detail in it because I wanted to keep it as bare bones as possible. I was like, this is the crux of what this particular term means or is used in the literature. It's not all-inclusive, wasn't meant to be all-inclusive, and it's much more complicated than what I made it out to be. But it's a very simplistic thing, like saying, rule utilitarianism. What is good is in accordance to a rule for the greatest good of the most amount of people, right? That's the simplest way to put it, right? I have pluralism, I have, and things of that nature in there. I have explaining the difference between subjective morality, objective morality, moral cognitivism, moral non-cognitivism. So if you want to go check it out, I think that that kind of helps if they get this kind of understanding what these terms are used when they have these kind of conversations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely recommend your work when it comes to.
I appreciate that.
When it comes to, if someone wants to have at least the bare basics for like the beginning course of logic and stuff like that, then I do definitely recommend you. I've collected a lot of philosophical papers myself on virtue ethics. I've talked to some academics on, in general about ethics.
Send them to me. I do have some on virtue ethics, but I'll probably like to read them because I find virtue ethics to be, at least to me personally, makes more sense to base upon what is ethically right given some personal things about oneself. And I do look at it from the Aristotelian point of view, where you have a virtue that's between two vices, and you want to find that kind of happy medium. You want to find the best possible position to be in, that you're not going to one or two extremes. And I think that makes sense to me if we're going to talk about morality, where you don't want to be, like, for example, when it comes to honesty, you want to be honest, but you don't want to be brute honest. You don't want to be honest so much what you hurt people, and you don't want to be dishonest. So you want to be in the middle there. They call that the golden mean.
Yeah, that's what it is, the golden mean.
Yeah.
And that is definitely interesting. Like, I me and you both sort of lean on that.
Yes.
And I think it's I personally view it as more like, I view it as better than utilitarianism. I just think that in terms of virtue ethics, I'm pretty sure Randolph doesn't know any of these terms.
No, he has no idea. By the way, did he change his reference page? Because I'm not finding it now.
I'm not sure.
I love this. How is atheism not an ism? The ism suffix belongs to theism. Why? Why? Why is it just theism, dumbass? Theism, again, ism means proposition. Jesus Christ, dude. He's just so... Ugh. But where was it? Where was his his references. There it is. Look at these references. And they don't say what he thinks he says. But anyways, he's talking about a dictionary. So, okay, so this is... and again, if he was just arguing that these are dictionaries saying things, that's fine. But he's arguing these are prescriptive. And that's where the problem comes in. This is called argumentum ad dictionarium fallacy. So that's a fallacy. That's a fallacy. Glossary for the Atheist Frontier is his own webpage, or related to him. That's a fallacy. Self-referential. This is self-referential. I don't know what the arguments for atheism is. YouTube video. Oh, okay. Like, that's authoritative.
So
I mean, okay, so what's this one? Princeton World Net. Yeah, again, dictionary. Okay, again, argumentum ad dictionary. These are all fallacies. Nothing in here makes sense to me. I don't think he has one, Rational Wiki. Okay, look, I will cite Rational Wiki every so often, but I know they're a shit organization. I know that they don't get shit right. They're owned by Conservapedia, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? Somebody cite me on that. But I think they're owned by Conservapedia, or at least they have some relationship to them. But
no, they hate each other.
Don't they? Do they? Because I thought they were related. Okay, I'll take that back. But they have a lot of errors. That is a fact. I can point out a lot of errors on Wikipedia.
Conservapedia is basically, from what I've known from that, Conservapedia is more of like the Christian fundamentalist version.
Yeah, I knew that, but I thought they had a relationship with. I could be wrong. Maybe I may have thought of something else. All right, I'll take that. I'll walk that one back. But here we go. This one, A Manual for Creating Atheists by Peter Boghossian. Okay, that's fine as a resource, but it's not a publication by a something along the lines of a peer review. Okay, yeah, it's a book, fine. If you want to go read it, great. I think Peter Boghossian has made some huge argumentation errors, especially when he puts out like the mind virus. He thinks that religion is a virus. I think it's hyperbolic. But I mean, okay, sure, you use it as a reference, but there's nothing in here that he has no peer review papers in here. I don't think, does he? Again, dictionary. American Atheists. Who gives a shit about what the American Atheist said? Canadian Atheists. That's his thing. Self-referential. I mean, dictionary again. Okay, here we go. The Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy is in fact peer reviewed, and it doesn't say what he thinks it says, because if you why is the certification not working? Why am I having a problem with the certification? Did you see that?
It's your web. It's the internet trying to give you mercy.
Yeah, I'll take care of it. 1 sec. Okay. So let me. I just fixed it. At least on mine for a while. All right. So can you guys see this? I got to put it on the tab, don't I? Okay. The outside could see this. It even says atheism. Atheism is the view. What is atheism? Can you read that? Can you read that to the audience? What I highlighted?
Atheism is the view that there is no God.
Hit his own references. Atheism is the view that there is no God. He's citing a page, and this is by Bruce McCormick, who's an atheist, saying that atheism is the view that there is no God. Now he never went past the beginning, right? He never went past the beginning. Because up here it says the term atheism describes a person who does not believe that God or a divine being exists. He never made it past that in the article. I've read this article numerous times. He's never made it past that. Never made it past it, because he doesn't recognize that this is because of this. If you view there is no God, you believe you don't have a God belief. So this up here entails, this, and he never made it past this, obviously. So this is basically shitting on what he wanted to say. So yeah, that's the only one I can see in here. The Oxford Handbook of Atheism. I don't think he's ever read it, because if he did, he noticed that Graham Oppie wrote a chapter in it. I believe it was chapter 4. Go check it out.
Graham Oppie clearly wrote the book on atheism.
Yeah, and he craps on Stephen Bullivant's arguments. And Stephen Bullivant doesn't have the greatest arguments. He's a theist, by the way. Here's an atheist. You can cite theists. I got no problem with it, but I don't think he recognizes that Stephen Bullivant is a theist. He believes that gods exist. And he only argues that we should hold atheism from an etymological point of view, which doesn't have really much support by any means.
I believe Peter Boghossian is a philosopher of education.
He is a philosopher of education. And look, I mean, sure, his words mean something, but it's not a peer review paper that he's citing. It's basically citing Richard Dawkins, citing something about philosophy. Look, no, if you want to cite his biological papers, that's fine. But if you want to cite books like The God Delusion, make it very clear that it's pop science kind of stuff, or pop philosophy in this case, right? Mm-hmm. Again, dictionary. Silverman, American Atheist. Who gives a shit? Urban Dictionary. He cites Urban Dictionary. Mm-hmm. This is a leader of the atheist community, of the Canadian Atheists, and he thinks Urban Dictionary is authoritative to be a reference.
Well, to be fair, his hero Aaron Ra has literally cited satirical dictionaries of the word faith.
I mean, it's just. Did anybody else beside me point out to him how dumb this shit was? And here's a blog. This is just that right here that's highlighted. I just checked out. This is a blog. That's all it is. It's just somebody's blog. Not authoritative. Again, you can cite blogs. I don't mind that. You can cite my blog as a reference. I don't mind that. Just don't treat it as prescriptive. Don't take it as authoritative. Don't take it as an expert, right? And this is what he portrays itself to be, you know? So, anyways, I'm about ready to wrap this up because we're coming up to the 90-minute mark. I think if anybody's got any questions. Maki says, if you click on the citation where he cites Canadian Atheists, it'll take you to the actual site, not this ridiculous crap. It's still crap, but it offers different crap. Okay, let's find out. It's still crap. It's just different crap. Okay, so Canadian Atheist.
Gotta have a variety of it.
Yeah, just different crap. The absence of belief of deities.
I mean, well, here's the thing about the absence of belief in deities. Do you believe that you have an absence of belief in deities?
Well, to hold that position rationally, you would believe that you don't believe, right? Just like it's similar to me in a way of ever heard of the KK principle?
I think I haven't.
The KK principle is basically if you know something, you know that you know it.
Yeah.
And so, and I brought this up to Ozzy one of these days, and I really didn't get a full answer. So maybe I'll readdress it again because I was like, isn't there something called the BB principle then? To be rational, that if you now again not the same as the KK because the KK principle, not the KKK people, don't say that's not that. The KK principle that if you know something that you know it, that seems to be of a logical entailment or an epistemic entailment. But if I say if I believe something, I believe that I believe it. That's only a condition of rationality. It doesn't have to necessarily hold. But if you do know something, it follows by the KK principle that you know it. So there's a little bit of difference there. Would be a fun topic if everyone wanted to talk about these things. We need to get a real epistemologist on one of these days. So. What other questions you got? Anything you want to wrap up there, Mr. Brass? It was fun.
Not really. I think we covered a lot of good ground on this. It was interesting talking to you about ethics too.
I like ethical theory.
Mm-hmm. I'll make sure to send you the PDF of this big collection of virtue ethics things.
I would like that very much.
I'll share it with you later.
Thank you. All right, guys. Thanks for watching another episode of the CessPool. If you have somebody out there that's a problematic YouTuber and you want a critical analysis of it, of these problematic behaviors, put their information in the video comment section or reach out to me directly, or preferably do both. And I will check it out. Hopefully, right now, I'm generally only doing people that I've had personal experience with, obviously. Now, after some time, I might branch out because I don't deal with anything like these YouTubers like Gabby Hanna or Shane Dawson or any of those weirdos, or Nicion. I have nothing to do with any of those things. I have like a 1 degree separation only because I happen to know people that know them, like Jimmy Dishonest Snow, and of course I do stuff with the Drunken Peasants, which they're not fans of Nicion, but they do know him. But if you want to talk about certain people that have been problematic people that we know, then that's what I'm here for. And they could do the same to me. But in fact, they've done it for how many years? How many videos have they made of me? I make a one and done on somebody, and they spent like 30,000 fucking videos on me. It's unimaginable how much time they waste. That I'm the worst person on the entire planet, or something. It's strange to be obsessive behavior they have.
Well, I mean, you're obviously a criminal, Steve.
Well, I mean, only the criminal aspect of the law of love. I'm too loving.
It's a good thing you're not guilty of half the things that people say you are.
I'm not guilty of any of them, but if I was, I'd like to hear the evidence for that. But they always want me to watch some videos, like watch this Trolls video. I'm like, fuck you! I'm not spending my time watching some Trolls video. If you want to be an adult and say, here's the evidence, I'll say, well, nope, you're wrong here and here. But like the other day, I said a misstatement. I said something wrong. Hang on, let me finish because I want to get this out there. I had a misremembrance of something only because the person wasn't being clear on what they were saying. Right, so there's always multiple things going on, and my chronology was off. My date was off, even though I didn't really fundamentally make any mistake as far as what I was thinking of, because I was thinking of a very specific thing, but it was a minor. But I talked to somebody afterwards, and we fixed it. We're like, yes, absolutely. Oh, you're right. I corrected it because the misremembrance was when the event happened, because it's hard to remember shit over, 8 fucking years I've been on YouTube, right?
And you're old.
But the person came to me directly, called me directly, and said, I think that you made a mistake here. And you know what I ended up doing? I ended up agreeing with them, and they didn't get blocked. How weird is that?
Man.
I know.
Man, that's really something,
weird.
Steve. Really broke them.
I'm a trendsetter, dude. I'm a trendsetter. Yeah. All right, plug your shit so we can get the hell out of here because it's hot and I'm hungry. Like I said, I've been freaking stuck behind this computer terminal for 4 fucking hours before this, doing a bunch of massive paperwork stuff.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on. You can find me on YouTube at Mr. Brass, and you can also find me on Twitter at Brass Vaughn. Like I said, it was nice talking to you, Steve.
Likewise, my friend.
Yeah, and it was fun dunking on Randolph.
Yes, well, he deserves it. Like I said, if you guys want to talk about ethical theory, go compare, how I explain ethical theory to the things that Randolph is doing. I mean, he absolutely is lying to people, and he doesn't care. I mean, where can you do with that? He's been explained it. Other people explain it. I mean, the entry feline, Glenn, a whole bunch of people explain him. Dude, you're just wrong. You're putting out misinformation. A lawyer has explained these things. OPT lawyer has explained them. He says they're wrong. But of course, he doesn't care because he's running a narrative. He wants to harm people. That's not ethical. When you're out there trying to slander people and defame them, that's not ethical. Rose, give me a $5 sticker. Thank you, Rose. And it's funny. I was just put about a shout out to you, Rose. Rose is a moderator for a channel that I've recently discovered, even though they think that we go back years for some reason. Not the case. I only started knowing him not too long ago. Roadhog. Been liking his stuff. He's not everybody's cup of tea. Let's put it that way. He's very, very in your face, the way I used to be years ago on YouTube. So I get it. And I also get that when you're really in your face like that, there's nothing wrong with that, but be prepared for the fuckery that comes along with it, because I've been stalked for. I shouldn't use the word stalk because I don't want to minimize an actual stalking, but I have been definitely harassed, and I have been lied about, and I have people come into my real life to do something. Do many things. I've had people call things on me.
It had people wear a mask of you.
I've literally, these are sociopaths that do this. It's literally so. You know how many people I've ever called the police on? No, none. Zipped. No. At least not before after I've been on YouTube. Before I've been on YouTube, I've had some things I've had to call the police for. But I mean, since I've been on YouTube, I've never had to call the police.
Yeah.
I've never called CPS. I've never sent a death threat. I mean, these people are just fucking insane, and yet they spend their entire time trying to vilify me and come after me. Yet there's so many worse people around than I. These people, there's actually people that believe a bunch of shitty shit that they could spend their time worrying about, but they need to spend their time worrying about me. And now that people are recognizing it, they're upping their game. They're making even more outrageous statements, and I find that to be interesting. So, anyways, thanks Rose for dropping by. She is new to the channel, like I said, and she's from the Roadhog thing. Go check out Roadhog's channel. I thought you were a mod over there. Okay, maybe she's not. I might. See, I made an error. Rose corrected me. Now I have to block her forever. No, I'm kidding. All right. Well, we all make mistakes. The thing is, we fix them in real time if we can, right? I thought she was a mod. But anyways, go check out Roadhog's channel. So, hi guys, and we will see you. I don't know, probably 2 more days. I'm not going to stream tomorrow, but the day after. Okay. Sounds good. All right, thank you, Mr. Brass, for joining us. Always a pleasure to see you, and keep in touch and send me that stuff. I'm interested in it. Okay.
Yep. All right.
Peace, brother.
Peace, brother.